In the past readings, Jesus reminded us that we should be careful not to judge the sinner because sometimes it is the sinner who is actually going to heaven because of the humility of his heart. That he accepts that he is a sinner and goes to Jesus to receive grace. And sometimes it is the righteous one that doesn't go to heaven because they don't see the need for God's grace, which is actually what we need to enter heaven. But today, Jesus also reminds us to be careful and ask ourselves how we react when someone tells us of our wrongdoings, or when someone seems to be more righteous than us, or acts more properly than us. And we are jealous, we are envious, and we want that person not to exist. And that temptation is real. I know I felt that temptation when I was starting my faith. When I would question, how could that person tell me I'm wrong? I know better than him. I studied more than him. I sacrifice more than him. I've been faithful. I've been a Christian much longer than him. How dare he say that? I will not listen to him. I will stay with my way. But doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like the Pharisees who felt that they were better than God? Forget Jesus. When he lived, they even questioned Scripture because they wanted to interpret Scripture the way they wanted to interpret it, which is why they were at odds with Jesus, with God himself, because they did not recognize the person, the divine being in front of them, because they were so focused on themselves. Similar to the past gospel where the Pharisee and scribe in front of the altar, nearest the altar, could not get to heaven because he was so focused on himself when he saw the sinner, the sinful man. This time, he also fails to accept God when he sees someone that God sends. So it's not a sinner, but even the righteous one, even that whom God sends, he questions. See, that's what happens when we fail to give ourselves to God and recognize that he speaks through his people. You see, a rejection of those who sends God is a rejection of God, not only because they are the messengers, but because they do not care what God is saying. Because at the heart of that rejection is a declaration that I am God, not the person that God sent, not God himself. I am God. If that is your disposition, if that is what your principle is, you might be conscious, you might be unconscious of it, but if that is how you live your life, then yes, even Jesus, God himself, you would definitely not recognize. So as we continue our Lenten journey, ask yourselves, what effort have I made to know who God is, what God's will is for me? What efforts have I made to study his word, to study the faith that he has handed to us down through the church? How am I preventing myself from coming to know Jesus? Because he is God and not me.